Yeah.
All right. Whatever the blank you say.
I don't like the rule, but I say it in everyday waking life, but on here I can't. JoJo get me.
Yeah.
Well, the Raging Cajun, no F bomb. Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night. I've had a lot of medicinal from Florida, and I've had too much caffeine, and I'm about to crawl out of my skin and die. But I had a goodies powder. My mom gave me some weird V8 energy drink, and then I did something from a medicinal dropper. So, and some other stuff. But then what a way to start. But we got Jay McNicholas here with us tonight. And then our guest, Denny Sargent. Interview with a werewolf. Tonight, our Halloween special. This month has been crazy with Halloween stuff.
Cool.
I had Steven Snyder on last week. He made fun of QAnon stuff. He didn't really make fun of it. He just got into how crazy it was. Like, technically, I don't remember much. I just know it was weird, but mostly it was Wisconsin and all this weird stuff. House of the Rock in Wisconsin. We mostly got into crazy Wisconsin, like Death Trip kind of stuff. And gosh, we've had a good lineup. Who else did we have, Jay? I'm trying to. My memory is like already.
The first three this month were all Wham, so I wasn't on them.
Yeah. Let me look. I got them right here. We had Steven Snyder. And let's see next. Oh, Frater Tenebris, The Philosophy of Dark Paganism. I would suggest listening to that one. That one was crazy. Like, he's a really cool dude and great. And I like the guy, but he is left-hand path, and he's not a Satanist, but very similar. And when I have those kind of people on, I turn into like this weird Geraldo Rivera or something, which I don't even really like Geraldo Rivera, but I like have this Christian schoolboy innocence because I was raised with my dad, a preacher in Georgia and all that stuff. But I love Native American spirituality. I love Norse. I love shamanism. But, I've studied Christianity, and I've had some weird experiences with that, with seeing beings of light. So I think there's Christ consciousness, call it the Jedi, call it Nirvana, call it whatever you want. But this dude was basically saying he invokes demons and has an alliance with Lucifer.
Wow.
And if you look at the YouTube video and the expressions on my face, like, it was some good Halloween stuff. And then the first one was Jonathan Hunt, Trick or Treat Tarot, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I got those tarot cards were awesome.
Yeah, those are really cool. But tonight is the enchilada, the California burrito, the big one. Denny Sargent, werewolfmagic.com. How's it going, Denny? Great to have you here.
I'm fine. I'm fantastic. In fact, I promise I'm not going to talk about worshiping Satan. I'm going to talk about shamanism, animism, Mother Nature, and how I fell into this insanity and ended up doing 2 books. 2 books.
Nice.
This is the first one. This is the second one. And I'm working on a 3rd one now. And I'm teaching Werewolf Magic online now, through no fault of my own. I was approached.
It's really cool. And when I had that left-hand guy on, I asked him tough Jesus questions. I don't really feel the need for that tonight with you, so we're good. Yours is more shamanism and pagan, Norse and berserker.
That's right. I got a bunch of Norse stuff. Well, werewolf cults existed throughout all of Western culture. The earliest ones I found were in Greece, and the earliest is Mesopotamia. And then and I'm a historian. I have a master's degree in ancient history. I'm not messing around. And when I fell into all this, I was like, well, is it really such a thing? And then I found them all. If you saw my first book, I think I sent it to you. I've got a whole first part is just history of werewolves and werewolf cults. And the werewolf cults were people who were shape-shifting. And it's about animism and it's about shamanism. And we now are left with these sort of Hollywood tropes and these horrible movies of werewolves and slicing people, which I love. I'm gonna be honest.
Me too.
Love them.
So when were you bitten?
Well, metaphorically, I went through a really rough time about 5 years ago where I lost everything. I lost my house, my wife, my job, everything. Was incomplete at the end of my rope in many, many ways. And I meditate every night, and I lived right near 70 acres of woods, and every night I'm meditating and trying to work through this trauma, and it's getting worse and worse. And this wolf spirit showed up in my meditation, and I thought I was losing my mind, and I ignored it for a while, and then finally I said, after weeks of this, I said, "What are you doing here?" And it looked at me, and it basically said, "I'm here to help you. You called me." And okay, so now, and then at that point I said, "Well, what do you want me to do?" And it said, you need to get out of your head. You need to go into the woods, and you need to let your animal self out, because you live in a repressive culture that has been teaching you since you were born that you're not an animal and animals are wrong, and that anything that doesn't fit into a narrow religious or political framework in this country is evil. And if you think that you're not an animal, try looking it up. Try doing some research on it. So what I found out is, like, we are 98% genetically the same as chimpanzees. We are 87% genetically the same as wolves. We are animals, right? And this is when I teach classes, I make everybody say, "I'm an animal," okay? And they always start with, "Well, I'm an animal." It's like, no, you're an animal, right? Aren't you guys animals? You were born. You're Homo sapiens. You're not a fluff of cloud, right? And so owning that side to yourself is really, our culture doesn't like wildness and craziness in kids that are bad, that are kind of wild and run amok. Yeah. But you talk to Native American people, you talk to tribal people. I hung out with shamans from Siberia that came to Seattle a number of times. Legit shamans. Not shaman is used a lot nowadays, and it's not used correctly. And white people who get a certificate are generally not really shamans. I talked with shamans who from the age of 4 were trained by shamans in rural Siberia and left their body and shapeshifted and all this stuff. And I've hung out, and then I hung out with shamans in Guatemala and also in central Mexico near Oaxaca. And so this sort of stuff has been very interesting to me. But once I realized what all this had been throughout our culture, through the berserkers, through the Norse, the Romans, the Greeks, they have had very intense, very important werewolf cults of masses of people getting together and letting out their beast, and then bringing it back down again. I don't think it's really particularly spiritual. I think it's there in us. We've got the DNA in us. It's going to a trance state, just like the shamans and the animists did, and letting it out and letting it take over and shutting down what I call your upper cortex, your brain and your ego. So it's taken me 5 years to get like a technique that works. And now I go to, I went to Starwood. You guys know Starwood? Big festival, 1,500 people.
I have heard of it.
Yeah, pagan festival in Ohio. They had me do it. I had 200 people at one event. And we, through the growling and howling and all the stuff that's in my books, they all went under and they all went feral. I mean, they were running around on all fours around the bonfire and howling and growling and didn't want to come back into human consciousness. So it's nothing terribly mystic. It's just a bunch of stuff that these people have been using for thousands of years.
Well, yeah. Well, one of the fascinating things too, we do a lot of paranormal. And after I had testicular cancer and my dad died, I had a lot of experiences with UFOs, seeing things in the sky and different types of beings with witnesses. And but one of the fascinating things about paranormal and cryptids is there really is a bizarre dogman situation with a lot of cases, and there's serious people that investigate, like Linda Godfrey. I've had her on the show, and she's has wrote books about the Bray Wolf or whatever like that. There's some weird town that they had so many werewolf sightings, the sheriff start keeping them in a box, and then they start taking them serious, like a weird situation seeing these things. So, and I have a book on Bigfoot, also on shamanism, interviews with medicine people, but it's just weird on a lot of different levels when you bring up and invoke werewolf. I think of Dogman. I've had hunters on tell a story of seeing Dogman face to face, and you could hear the fear in his voice, and it would raise your arm hair up. So it's just fascinating on many different subjects, for sure. Layers.
I think Dogman and Werewolf are exactly the same thing. In fact, I read some of her stuff, and I've watched a bunch of the Bray Road Beast, of the Bray Beast, whatever it was called.
Yeah.
And the term is interchanged. What's interesting, in ancient Greece, they use the term dog and wolf simultaneously. Like the words can go back and forth. And it's the same in Rome, in ancient Rome. They had werewolf cults. Rome was founded by a wolf goddess. Romulus and Remus were and the big festival they had in Rome. I mean, as I got involved in this, like personally going into the woods and working on this stuff, I was doing my research because I thought I had no plan on writing a book. None. I thought this was my own psychotherapy and I wasn't going to like write a book. But I started doing research and finding the history, and I was like, these are major historians like Livy and Patroclus and Herodotus, and they wrote constantly about seeing whole towns turn into werewolves for a week at a festival, and in the Celtic world, in England and Ireland, there's a tribe in Ireland called the Ossories, the Ossory tribe, and St. Patrick and the Christians said, oh no, these people every year they turn into werewolves for a week, and then they come back. So the question is, what's happening there? Are people just making it up, or are they? What are they seeing? What they're seeing is a shamanic ritual, of a tribal ritual where everyone does certain things with drums and probably psychedelics and lots of other things, and then they enter the state of consciousness that I've managed to replicate, which is you shut down your upper brain and you activate your lower brain, what Carl Sagan calls the animal mind or the dragon mind. In other words, you're basically just accessing the beast mind that's been with you from the beginning, because we came from the first DNA, where all the animal DNA in the world is in our body and in our group unconscious mind. So it's just a matter of like observing that, seeing how to do it, testing. It took me 4 years to figure out what worked, what didn't. Looked at a lot of Norse stuff. There's a lot of very specific Norse magical stuff, how to do it. There's a lot of stuff in different pagan cults. And the thing that freaked me out the most was that witches in Europe that were captured and tortured and burned alive, right? Thousands and thousands of them, right?
Yes.
50% of them were accused of being werewolves as well.
Wow.
So this shamanic animist traditions that had come from ancient Greece, that had come from the Norse, that had percolated down into Western Europe and had informed these quote unquote witches. They were just pagans who were still doing stuff that had been done for hundreds of years, which is shape-shifting, moving, letting your animal come out to do things. And so it took me 5 years to research, put it all together, tried it, made it worked for me. And then I ended up writing this book. And I've written probably, 20 books, 15, 19 books. The most important ones are listed on my website, werewolfmagic.com. I write about all kinds of obscure occult stuff. I did not plan to write this book. I thought it would make me look like a nut. But I am a nut. It's fine.
That's right. Well, I'd like to get more into the Norse aspect, the Berserker aspect, if there's more to that. And Jay has been up since 6 a.m. We love the subject matter. He looks really sleepy. It's not from you. So he does that a lot. He works at Home Depot. But
I was up at 6 too. So you and I are like,
tired.
I'm drinking coffee at dinner.
Crazy
time.
bald, tired heads.
Yeah.
Like
You're
the
right.
Bob Marley song. Yeah.
We're like, it just means that our brains are so intense that we just burn the hair right off.
That's
Well,
right.
if we go like this, we can make a pawn shop sign.
Oh my God, you're right. That's very cool.
A pawn shop sign. I don't know.
They have the 3 gold balls, 3 brass balls.
Oh yeah.
I got it. That's very old school. You get that.
Yeah.
I don't, but okay. But the Norse thing, anything, it's not often we get to talk about it, so I just love to talk about it. We had Evelyn Riesdack on. We've had a few people on it.
Good.
It's rare, but
I'm
anything
all
you
for
could tell us Norse.
Sure. I can tell. So you've seen the Northmen, right?
Yes.
All right. So The Northman is the coolest movie ever, and I'll tell you what. In terms of what I'm into and what I do, and in terms of this stuff, so my friends saw it and they said you have to see The Northman. I was like, oh, it's just another, it's another book. It's another movie of Vikings. They're like, no. They literally kidnapped me with a case of beer, brought me to this big TV, sat on either side of me and said, no, you're watching this movie. I'm like, all right. Loved the movie. Loved it. But it wasn't until they kept saying, wait for it. The scene where the shaman is in the cave, you remember? And
Yes.
they come and they do this mass initiation to being berserkers is what they're doing. And that is exactly, I watched it and I went, holy moly. That is exactly what I researched. Is exactly what I found. And to a certain degree, it's exactly what I do with people and with my group. I have a pack. We get together and do this. And the bowl full of psychedelic stuff and the chanting, the shaman, the way he looked, the amount of the sort of magical stuff he was doing. And a lot of people missed this, and I missed it too. So the hero of that movie, right? And I can't remember his name, but you have two choices in Viking magic if you want to be a berserker. So first of all, berserker means bear sark. Bear sark means to wear the bear skin, right? And that's where in lots of different cultures, in Rome, in Greece, they refer to wearing the skin. In Latin, it's for the Romans, it was vespellus. It means a skin wearer. So this term has been used a lot. It's very interesting. Way before, Judeo-Christianity and all this stuff. So Beresark is berserker, and we call them berserkers, but there's two. There's the Beresark, and then there's the Ulfsark. And the Ulf means wolf. And the hero, and I missed this. I watched the movie twice, and my friend said, you missed it. The hero took both initiations. There's one scene where someone says, you took both bear and wolf, you're crazy. In other words, he was wearing the wolf skin and the bear skin, which made him the biggest badass in the entire show, right?
Nice.
And so that was pretty accurate. And the fact that he would go into that trance state, you saw them go into it, and then they just did not care. Like they climb up stuff they shouldn't have been able to climb up.
Brutal.
Took out 100 people they shouldn't have been able to do because they had suppressed and now it's not something I train people to do, and I don't plan to do it.
Come on now, let's have the facts here. I'm just kidding.
They shut down their ego and all that stuff that makes us confused. I mean, if you think about it right now, you're thinking about 16 things besides what you're doing right this minute. You're thinking about what you did yesterday, what you're going to do tomorrow, what am I going to have for dinner, what am I going to do? Your brain is multi-processing, which means you're not really focusing on anything. When you do the kind of trance state stuff I do in Werewolf Magick, you shut this down completely. You literally visualize it and you work. You let your brain sort of shut down. You let your animal self come up, and you keep activating down here so that you're in a pure animal state. And animals aren't planning what they're going to do tomorrow. They're not thinking about taking photos. They're not thinking about who called. They're just existing. And once you get in that state, and it takes my group about an hour to 2 hours to get into that trance state of just existing as an animal, all of a sudden your senses become much more potent because you're not busy wasting all your drive, your computer drive up here.
Yeah.
You're just existing and experiencing things. And this is what the berserkers did. See, they would get into that single-minded animal state, and they didn't worry about climbing over the fence. They didn't worry about getting hurt. They just Rah! And went for it, right? And I don't do that, but I get into that state of consciousness.
I think you just did it. But yeah, Jay, if you haven't seen The Northman, you need to see it. It's by the guy that did The Witch.
I wrote it down.
He did The Witch, which is really good. He did The Lighthouse with Robert Pattinson and William Dafoe for it, and The Lighthouse and Mermaid Sex, and it's black and white. He's about to do Nosferatu.
Yeah, Nosferatu.
This dude makes crazy movies. That Witch was nuts, man.
He's brilliant director. like
Yeah.
through the
Robert Eggers or something.
Yeah, that's
Eggers.
I think I saw The Witch. I'm not sure, but I think I saw it. But I did write it down, so I'll
Was
look.
there a bunch of naked chicks at the end floating around?
I don't remember what I had for breakfast. Dude.
I want to see that Haxon movie. It's supposed to be some weird black and white, like
it's a
witchcraft
wonderful movie. Yeah,
Look, I have it somewhere.
Yeah, I have it. I think it's on YouTube now. Yeah, that's
I'll
a
check it.
Swedish 20s.
Is it silent? It has sound and everything, like music, I guess.
Very
right?
cool. Very cool movie. Yeah, I love all that stuff. What can I say?
Well, I've been called a vampire since junior high, and I don't try to do it. I don't know what it is. Maybe because I'm pale, but I have a Dracula and I have a wolf. That's by the same artist. I got it when my dad died and I went nuts and started doing drugs. My dad told me if you ever did drugs, he'd shoot you. When he died, I like turned into a little Scarface for a couple of years. Now I'm not, of course. I'm just a chubby, peaceful, laid back person that was just on the weed. But anyway, my point is, what happened is I went through chemo and I read those Anne Rice books and I kind of like grasped onto them. Maybe, it spread to my stomach and lungs. So, and I also said a prayer during that time to be a superhero because I was in the comics and stuff. And then of course, a few years later, my dad died and I started to have all these experiences, but something about grabbing onto those books and imagination. And I got, into Dracula. I read that and all kinds of vampire books. But when I went back to school, I was pale and wore black and everyone called me a vampire and I was bald. So it's probably like I got called Powder, that movie with the little dude that does electricity and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Even though that's a good movie, but it's by a pedo dude. That the same guy that did Jeepers Creepers, unfortunately. The guy that made those movies is a pedo. But Powder's really good. But it's weird, those spirits, and in some things, I like that Francis Ford Coppola, he turns into a werewolf.
Yeah, yes. Well,
that's kind of like new in the game, isn't it? I mean, they've always been able to do a wolf, right?
Yeah. The if you read the original, it's actually clear in the original book that he turns into a half wolf, half man, and he has power over animals and stuff like that. But have you read Anne Rice's werewolf books?
Yes.
I love those books. Those books are really fun.
They're really good. I have those.
Those are great, badass werewolves. I just love it.
Yeah, it sucks that she croaked. I've been watching Interview of the Vampire, the new show on AMC. It's good, but they definitely, the male on male stuff. I understand that needs to be there a little bit, but they take that to an extreme. But I still like it.
I haven't watched it.
Louis and Lestat, they done went gay porn up in there pretty much, but it's still good. But anyway, new subject. but I still enjoy it. They're doing Witches of Mayfair.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, that's fun too. Yeah,
I wish they'd do the Werewolf series, but I was sad that she passed. So I love her books. She wrote those books when her daughter died from cancer. So to read them and have that, experience, I actually shared that with her in email once because I was going to interview her, but she couldn't or something, or she only wanted to do like some little weird, like 10-minute weird thing or something. And something happened, we didn't do it, but it was just weird that her daughter and all that inspired those through tragedy and stuff like that. But the werewolf spirit. Have you?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
All right. I don't know how much have you read of this one or this one?
I've read all of the second one, and I'm working on the first one. You gave me the first one. Working on this
one? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I finally got it too. Yeah, I'm glad you got it. Yeah. Okay. So you have some idea. If you read this one, you have some idea about what I'm doing and how it's happening. So yeah, this one came out because I did this and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't expect it to do well. But this book has sold way more than any of my other 18 books. And this is maybe the 20th podcast I've been on. I'd never been on a single podcast before. So I'm teaching this online and I get a slew of people writing me constantly. So the question I have is like, why is this of anything? Why is this triggering people and having people like,
oh, I know,
and do it? And it's because we're so repressed. We're so repressed that the religion we're born into and the culture we're born into and the politics we're born into are shoving us, and especially the business environment is like your job is to be fit into your culture and get married and do this and do that and work until you die and you make money for people who take your money. So anyway, and so then the question is, well, then what's the point, and why are people so upset? Why are people taking so many medications and why is depression and what I found out with this is that going into a trance state where you're dropping all of that stuff that we've been programmed with and just hanging out as an animal and going into the woods and experiencing life as it's happening at that moment, you come out of it, and then the next day when you're processed it, feel a whole lot better. I literally look 10 years younger than I did when I started this.
It's nature. That's what helps with
nature.
The earth.
Everything's about nature. Everything's about nature. Everything. I always, when we get together as a group, we say, when we put our hands on Gaia, on the earth, and we say, to you, from you, all things. Because we get everything from nature. And by going into the animal state, we can immediately hook into the ecosystem. Because our brain says, no, you can't do those things. You can't, see these things. You don't have paranormal activities. Our brain is so busy with logic and all this stuff. But when we're in that state, we can do whatever. We can do amazing things, just like the berserkers. I've been out wandering around naked in woods with a pair of shoes on. I learned to put a pair of shoes on if you're going to run around naked in the woods. I've snuck up on deer at night and grabbed them. I've snuck up on animals. I was in a completely feral state where I could see my way through the woods. I had night sight, I had all these things. It's not paranormal. It's just you shut down all this stuff and your animal senses take over. I think it's very real and logical stuff. And so I didn't plan to do a book about groups, but wolves are pack people, humans are pack people, we are pack. We need each other. You take a human being and put them alone in the woods for 10 years and they go whack.
They go nuts.
Let's hear Jay why he thinks people like the book so much. I know he's about to say something.
Oh, why, Jay?
Well, you got to look at the public. More people like dogs than other animals. And I've got experience with 8.5 years at the world's largest, or the U.S. largest home improvement center, and I've moved to the other home improvement center. And in my 8.5 years at my first job, people bring in dogs every day. And I was on the safety team, so I don't particularly care for it. We're not a pet store.
Right.
And we have on the doors, it says no pets. If it's a service animal, it's a different thing. But these people bring their dogs, their pet dogs, into a hardware store where I feel it's dangerous because we're driving forklifts around, heavy equipment. But all of the cashiers and all the girls who like dogs, they bring in dog treats for the people who bring their dogs in so they can, get close to it and pet the dog. So the reason why a werewolf book, and now a second werewolf book, is doing so good is because more people are into dogs than they are into cats. So in those 8.5 years, I've seen two bring in a cat. Right. One guy brought in a parrot. Everybody else brings in a dog. So the bulk of the United States are dog people.
Yay. You can't get away from them. Hey, come here.
He's got a dog.
I got like 14 dogs here and a pig.
14?
At least.
Wow.
It's a long story.
This is Faunus.
Very pretty. What is that?
That's a French dog.
What kind?
He's a poodle.
It's a French poodle.
Very pretty.
I don't cut him up funny with balls and stuff.
What's up, bro?
Right? He's a good boy.
Hey, buddy.
No barking. I know you're a good boy. Yeah. So
I think he said, Denny, that he wants pizza. So order up a pizza.
He did that. What's funny about him is he's a member of our pack, right? Like I have a group of people that I didn't plan to do packs. I didn't plan to do any of this. And people came to me and said, I want to try this. I've read your book and I want to try it. And I said, all right, come over and we'll work through it. I now have a small group where we get together every full moon. We do this. We go outside. We have a fire. I have woods. We hang out and we do these very simple rituals. We shut down our speaking. We do growling, howling, rocking, everything you saw in the from the Norse, everything you saw in the North. So Seder, which is Norse magic, I took a lot of. I went and looked and tried to find all the pieces of the animistic stuff that people did in Rome and in the Norse stuff and in the Greek stuff. And so we do a lot of rocking and shaking and sometimes drumming, and we go into a trance state. Yeah, and then if whatever's legal, we might do some of that as well. And I'm in Washington State, so kind of everything is okay here. And we go into it takes a while to get into that state, and then once we do that, we sort of run around and howl, and we shut down and we don't talk. My dog, for 6 months, my dog sat on the side and watched us, just like this.
What are those idiots doing?
They're like, I don't know. It's pretty doggy, but it's kind of weird. And then one night, he watched us and he said, "Okay, I'm in." And he jumped down and he came over and he sat in the circle with us. And now he does it every single time. We'll all stand in a circle and we'll start going. And we start growling and we start like I've opened up my entire chest and I can like for hours, and we get this rumble and it takes you into the state of consciousness. And the dog is right there. We run around and he runs around. We sit, he sits. He's one of our members of the pack. It's hilarious. The dogs can do that. Cats sit and watch. They're like, no.
Cats are more cerebral, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're like, too much work. That's too much work. I'm not running around in a circle, I'm not howling. I'm gonna go sit down. So that's what this second book is. It's like so many people came to me and said, well, how does this work in a group? And I said, all right. And I had a bunch of stuff. And the first book is still doing. In fact, the first book is out of print. It's on its, I think, 10th printing. I mean, it's insane. I've written a bunch of books. I've never had a book do this well. And I'm hitting something. I'm going to say this. I'm hitting a chord somewhere because this stuff, and I'm getting people writing me. I have a Facebook page too. That's right. Oh, boy, my howling is so good now.
So one thing I'm just kind of skipping around the chapters, but one that's catching my mind right now: Werewolf Magic with the Dead. What can you tell us about that?
All right.
Is it necromancy? Maybe. No.
Here's the thing, and this shocked me again as I fell into this. This was all stuff I was writing for me. I wasn't planning to write a book. I went to PantheaCon and I met the acquisition editors of Weiser and Llewellyn, and I had 5 proposals. And my friends made me put together a proposal for this, even though I thought it was bunk. I thought there's no way they're going to want it, and that's what they wanted. Oh, we don't. Oh, no. Werewolf Magic. I'm like, all right. This is obviously it's a bell of some kind.
Llewellyn is amazing. They've been hooking me up with
company.
so many interviews, and I just want to say thank you to them. They are freaking like the interviews have been so unique. We have like Greek witchcrafts coming on with like
they send us all this cool
Greek
stuff
gods.
too.
Jason Mankey and the girl. Yeah,
I know. I know a lot of those people.
Yeah.
And I told them to send you a book. I asked Marcus to send you a book. He sent it the next day. They've been nothing but helpful and kind and wonderful. And I've been sending books out to people who really wanted to do it and doing workshops and doing book signings. And I'm like, this was not what I had planned to do. So I'm sorry, coming back to what we were talking about.
Necromancy.
About necromancy. All right. So when I started doing this research on for myself, I was like, I kept finding stuff about werewolves and the dead. And I'm like, what? What is that? I mean, vampires, I can kind of see the myth and mythology, but, well, it gets interesting. So what I found out is that in Egypt, do you know the Egyptian god Anubis?
Yeah.
Okay. Anubis, they say, is a jackal, right? No.
But a jackal is also a form of dog, even if he's not a jackal.
But the newest stuff that just came out, and I actually I've got the citation in here, is that it wasn't a jackal because jackals weren't around at that time. It was what they call a golden wolf. It looks like a jackal, but it was a wolf. And there's another Egyptian god that looks just like Anubis called Wepawet. And Wepawet was a wolf, a different kind of wolf. And so then I started going, Then I started checking out, for example, Etruscan culture. Their god of the underworld, wolf, right? And then the Roman, the different Roman gods, wolves, right?
Yes.
Now, who's super popular now is Hecate. You guys have probably heard tons about Hecate.
Hecate, yes.
Who is that again? How do you spell it?
Hekete. It's either.
Yeah. Okay, it's a lady, right?
Yeah, it's one of the most important,
a dark lady,
one of the most popular goddesses out there.
Yes.
She's often shown with 3 heads, often 3 dogs, originally 3 wolves, and she was one of the goddesses that helped guide people to the underworld. Found this one, like I'm a historian, so I found this one historian who said we're virtually certain that Hecate was also Cerberus or Carabus, the dog that guarded the underworld.
Yes.
Who has 3 dog heads, but were originally 3 wolf heads. So there's been this connection probably all the way back into prehistory. We're talking prehistorical stuff. We're talking about shamanic, animistic times where we don't have any writings from that time. That the dead and wolves have been connected. And a really interesting historian said, we think it's because, like the Egyptians would bury, long before the Egyptian culture became big, that Egyptians would bury their dead in the desert, and then they would watch wolves come out of the desert, dig up the bodies and carry them off into the sandstorms, out into the, like the sort of mystical thing they would play. And then the story came up, they were guiding people to the Hall of Amenta. They're guiding people there. The Ainu, which is in Japan, another culture, I love this stuff, right? They believe that when you die, a dog or wolf guides you through the underworld to keep you safe to the place where the honored dead are taken. There's also Native American tribes that have a connection between the wolf or dog taking you into the right place in the spirit world. So the more I dug on this, the more I'm like, everywhere I looked, I found like wolves help people get across to the spirit world. I just thought it was kind of fascinating. And so some of the rituals I have in there are Norse. You probably saw the one about Norse. That's pulled directly from a Norse magical stuff, from some of the ancient books that were taken to Iceland. What do I want to say? The Eddas. The Eddas. So the one where you draw runes on a blade and you stare at the blade and you go to a crossroads. That's right out of pure Norse. And I found the same in Egyptian, and I found the same in Roman. I found the same in Greek. Once I started doing research, I was like, all this stuff is interconnected. And these people in the ancient world weren't dumb. They were trading and working with each other all across the ancient world. And we've gotten to this weird Victorian mindset that, oh no, the Greeks never traveled and the Romans never traveled. They were all working with us. So wolves have always been involved in being what we call psychopomps. They help you get across. And Odin, of course, is the lord of the wolves and shapeshifters. And you know you remember the Northmen, since we started with the Northmen.
Yes.
Do you remember when the Valkyrie came down and took him up?
Yes.
What she was riding?
Fenris?
A wolf. No, Fenris is the bad wolf. They were riding wolves, though. They were riding the good wolves. Fenris is like Loki's wolf, right?
I'm seeing something Fenrir, the Binding of the Dreadful Wolf, son of Loki. I pulled up a YouTube video. That's if you heard sound, that was by accident. But is that the same as Fenrir? The same thing?
Yes, Fenrir and Fenris are the same. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's got 8 legs, doesn't he? The Fenris wolf.
No. Odin's horse
has 8 legs. Yeah.
What's the story with the binding of him, though? Do you know that story? Like they binded him?
I do. Hey, if it's mythology and ancient history, I'm your man. You just asked me, I'm going to tell you. So, what happened with Fenrir was, and there's a lot of sympathy for Fenrir because Fenrir was a child of Loki and a giant, and there was a lot of that messing around in those days. And so. But he grew and grew and grew, and he was beloved by the gods. But he grew so big that Odin, the gods, started to fear him, and they decided they needed to bind him. But he was too big to jump on. So Tyr, who was one of the gods, he was a god of a god of intelligence and of battle and a lot of things. He volunteered to work it out with him, and he said I want to chain you. I need to chain you up for a while we do something, and then we'll let you go. And Fenrir said, I don't believe you. He said, I'll put my arm in your mouth so you know that I'm honest. And they chained him up, and then they refused to let him go. And Fenrir bit his arm off, which is why Tyr, and the rune for Tyr is like an arrow, like this. The Tyr is always shown with only one hand. And at the very end of days, when Ragnarok happened, Tyr and Fenris would battle each other to the end, and Odin would be involved.
It's interesting how Bigfoot and I guess Dogman stuff. A lot of people say it's from the Nephilim offspring, the mutants and stuff like that with the flood and all that. But it's just interesting. Loki, I mean, sounds like he shagged a giant.
Well, he did. Well, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of that in ancient mythology. I mean,
yeah.
Well, there's also Loki became a female horse and was impregnated. If you don't know that, man, look it up. It's very interesting.
It's weird.
There's some weird stuff in the Norse mythos.
I love
all mythology. I mean, look at Greek mythology. I mean, who didn't have sex with who? I mean, it was like, mythology is pretty. The ancient world was pretty off tracks. So.
Go ahead, Jay.
The weird thing is that what you mentioned earlier is that you've gone back and found all these connections between the Western world. If you go back far enough, everything comes from one or another origin. Like in Italy, you see that on the menus they have that little it makes like little L's, that little border around the edge of the paper menus or the placemats. That comes from Japan in 12,000 BCE.
Oh, interesting.
It traveled from Japan across the Aleutian land bridge down the western side of the Americas and then back over through the Polynesian Islands back to Japan, and then worked its way across the Americas and into Europe.
Interesting. Very interesting.
The people were called the Hoan people, which in Japanese stands for the rope people. So that rope border comes from Japan. Even more interesting, and I don't know if you've heard about this, is it doesn't have anything to do with wolves, but you go back to the Greek and the Roman mythos, so you got the story of Apollo and his 7 daughters, and Zeus is after them, and Zeus is trying to mate with Apollo's children, and Apollo doesn't want that to happen. So every time Zeus gets close, he protects him somehow, and eventually he moves them up into the stars, and they become the Pleiades. That exact same story is in Native American mythos.
Right.
It's the Great Bear Chief is trying to get the great Indian chief's daughters, and it's the story of Devil's Tower. And when the Great Bear Chief gets too close, or the Great Bear God gets too close, the chief raises the Devil's Tower to bring his daughters away, and the bear tries to climb up, and when he gets to the top, the chief raises his children into the stars and becomes the Pleiades. How does two cultures that don't have any interaction with each other have the exact story?
Well,
the exact story. The names are different, but the story is the same.
There's actually at least 2 other mythologies that have almost exactly the same story.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very well. I'm a big fan of Carl Jung. I think we have a group unconscious mind. I think these things come through that. And the other thing is that people say, well, these cultures could never have met. We now know. Okay, like they just dug up a tomb in India. I'm a big fan of Indian culture. I'm an initiated.
Which is good, because I have questions for you about that.
So what we know is, like, we used to think, these cultures never intermix. No, that's not true at all. They've been, when they dig up a tomb in India, they found Viking stuff, Sumerian stuff, other stuff from Mesopotamia. They found a Buddha, okay, in a Norse burial in Sweden. I mean, these people were moving around. They were talking. They were changing. The magic that they were doing in terms of, for example, shape-shifting is what I'm focused on. But that's everywhere. Mm-hmm. Like, I traveled in Morocco, and I found every place I've ever been. I lived in Japan for 4 years, by the way, in Tokyo. And every culture I've been in has shape-shifting, except you get outside of the Judeo-Christian sphere. You go into places like China and India and Japan. They believe in spirits, and they believe that people can go into a trance state and shift into something else. So if you watch anime, you see Japanese people turning into Inari, and Inari is the fox spirit.
Urutaruman.
Right,
They're
exactly.
Ultraman. They're Mickey Mouse. Their Disney World is Ultraman. 1966. It's
Right.
a guy
Yeah.
who's killed by a giant space policeman.
Right.
And because he's a good guy, he doesn't want to kill. He doesn't want Hayata to die. He gives him the beta capsule. Says, "Here, we'll share life together. And when you need me, push this button, and I'll come down and I'll kill the monster."
That's fantastic. Yeah. It was interesting. Japan really actually opened my eyes because I went to all the Shinto shrines. I studied Shinto. I went to a lot of the festivals. I was there for 4 years. My kid was born there, and there's the wolf or werewolf god is Okami, and you can go to the shrines, and there he is. And Okami, very interesting. Okami means great spirit, and you talking to people, like it's the wolf spirit, a big spirit in Japan, and they said, oh yeah, he's one of the first important gods or spirits that came and gave us all this sort of stuff that we do. So, I mean, you can, whatever mythos you want to go into, you're going to find stuff like this. But shape-shifting, you can. The earliest werewolf I found is 40,000 years old, and it's a cave painting in Portugal. Cave painting in Portugal, where you can see it's clearly a wolf head, a human body with a thing that makes it quite clearly human, and it's got a spirit, and they call it the werewolf, and this idea of shifting into different acts, to taking on the aspects or the mental focus of an animal spirit. This is what they did to survive. And the shamans I talked to from Siberia, and I hung out with them from Siberia, they said, look, my job is to find deer and elk for my tribe. And I do that by going into a trance state, leaving my body with the help of my animal spirit, and finding where the food is, and coming back and telling my tribe, because if they don't find it, we will die, right? And so shamanism and early animism, all of the shape-shifting stuff is about survival. And if you look at the Norse turning into the berserkers, they did that because they were maybe smaller tribes that needed to defend themselves, and they had to find a way to bring out their animal to defend themselves. So none of this is particularly, what do I want to say? It's not particularly strange or unusual. It is from our point of view, because we're brainwashed in a certain way, and we've been inculcated with certain religions and whatnot, that we see that there's heaven and hell, and there's God and the devil, and everything else is not real. But the reality is that nature is the true divinity, as far as I can tell. Like, everything comes from nature. And what I found with the werewolf magic stuff is that what shocked me more about any of this, when I go into these trance states out in nature, all of a sudden I plug into nature. It's like sticking my finger in a light socket. When I shut up my ego and my brain, and I accept my animal self and let it come out, all of a sudden nature opens up to me. It's like, oh, you're one of us now. Gaia says, okay, I can connect with you. You can connect with me because you're one of my children. You're an animal. The universe created you to be an animal with other animals. And I talk to Native Americans, right? Or you can talk to Native Americans, and they and other tribal people in Thailand and other places that I've been, they all refer to animals as people. Like we are human people, they are animal people. We go into the woods, we honor the tigers, we honor the deer. We kill the deer, but we say thank you for the meat, thank you for giving us your life, and we honor them, and that way they keep coming back. And we don't overhunt them, because then we won't have any food next year. And you talk to tribal people who are living in wherever you are, and I've been to lots of countries that they know their ecosystem is fragile, and they know that if they muck it up, they're going to starve.
They're going to die, yeah.
Whereas we have forgotten the basic rule, which is you don't poop where you eat, and you keep the ecosystem clean and open, because it's your body and it's your food, and we're killing ourselves. We're destroying our environment. We're destroying ourselves. Our bodies are full of chemicals. I mean, when I go into this state where I'm just simply animal stuff, I can feel it. I can work. I mean, I start to see and deeply know that we've really missed the boat. We've disconnected ourselves from nature. We have books, holy books that say, no, God gave you control over the world. Animals don't have souls. Animals don't matter. You can destroy anything you want. It doesn't matter because you're in control. And the reality is we're not. We don't get to say what we get with what nature happens. We don't get to destroy nature without getting really bad blowback. And that's what's happening now. So I didn't really fall into this sort of environmental view of it until I started doing this deeper and deeper and more, and realizing that if we don't reconnect with our ecosystem, if we don't reconnect with our own animal self, own it, that we are part of nature, we're in big trouble. So I mean, that's sort of the fun downer side of what I do.
Yeah.
Mostly we howl and have
Well, definitely the way things seem in this world, it seems very apocalyptic from the COVID crap and everything else. And now Putin threatening to blow us up every day and all that. It's just definitely it's crazier.
It is crazy. But nature will survive. Gaia will survive.
Yes.
The question is, will our species survive?
Probably not.
We'll be gone long before this planet even destroys itself.
Exactly.
It won't even be the planet that destroys itself. It'll be the sun. When the sun goes nova in 50,000, 60,000 years, we won't even be here.
Jay, you are right. That's it. Gaia will be around, but and there'll just be other species. Yeah. But if our species doesn't get clear with how to be honorable and how to connect with our own ecosystem, and that's probably the greatest thing that happens when my group goes into a deep trance state. We all of a sudden the trees light up. We can feel the Earth Mother. We can invoke Gaia, and we feel the energy fill us. We all of a sudden are open to all this stuff that our brain says, no, that's a bunch of crap. You can't do that. You can't access energy from Gaia. No, you have to,
I disagree. You can.
Of course you can. And when people stop chattering up here and just simply feel, I mean, then you're there. I mean, you talk to tribal people anywhere, they're not afraid of the animals. They're not afraid of the wilderness. We are. Like, why are Americans, why are Westerners terrified to go into the wilderness? Oh, there's bears,
spiders, and bears, and tigers, and what is it? What did she say?
Lions and tigers and bears. Oh
my! Exactly.
I love
that's
it.
Why they're deadly afraid of whatever it is they're afraid of. And, I call it the Indiana Jones bane. Every one of us has an Indiana Jones monster that's their bane. Indiana Jones is a snake. His father's is the rat. His son is right. Monkeys or scorpions. Mine is spiders. I hate spiders, but I still like to go out in the woods. Yeah. But the thing is, and you're absolutely right. If you actually go out into the woods, you can connect to nature in ways that you never thought possible. And if this may sound like way out there in left field, because I'm not a shaman and I don't know how to do shamanistic stuff, but
I'm not a shaman either.
And I figured this out purely from selfish means. But my friends and I would go out to Great Falls to smoke weed in high school or just out after high school, and it would be windy. You ever try to light a cigarette or a bowl when it's windy, the flame goes out. So I would concentrate and go, and I would think about the wind. Stop winning, stop being windy. And as soon as, like 3 times I'd think that, the wind would stop just long enough for me to light it. And I'd pass on, and then my friends couldn't light it because the wind came back. I'm like, just think about it. Think about the wind going away, and it'll stop. And they never could get it. I'm convinced that I can control the wind for selfish means.
Well, I think so. In my book, I talk about the wildness, the weird, and the way as being the 3 most important powers that are surrounded. The wildness is the sheer energy of nature. Once you go into it, if you shut your brain down and get rid of your frigging cell phone and just exist, all of a sudden, and you breathe and you're open to it, you suddenly feel this incredible energy coming through you, right? The weird is and this is a Viking term. This is a Norse term. The weird is the interconnectedness of everything in nature. And when I go into a trance state, I can literally see it. What you're talking about in terms of like getting the wind to shift, you're not making it shift. You're simply tied into the weird and are sort of bringing that to the you're like, I want this wind to sort of settle down, and you're just moving things a little bit in an unconscious way to make things happen. I mean, when we go in, and I'll tell you, when we go into a deep trance state, the deeper we are, the more magic we can do without thinking twice about it. Because, All right, I did a big group in at Starwood, 200 people, huge stone circle, big bonfire, tiki torches. I was terrified. I'd never worked with that many people before with this. And when I found out from my small pack and from other packs I've worked with, and this big pack, is that the more people are there, the faster they go under. Just like the Viking movie, just like the Norseman. You get a bunch of people together, and there may be some other substances that might be involved, and that help kind of click them over. People go under, and I had 200 people go under like that. And the minute that happened, and we were howling and growling and no talking. Once we're into that state, no talking. Because the minute you say this language that I'm using right now, I'm using 6 different, I teach linguistics and methodology and pedagogy, right, in university. I teach really straight stuff in university. But there are 6 different areas of your brain that you're utilizing when you're just learning when you're saying words. Because you have to come up with an idea, and then I can give you the whole thing, but it's not worth it. But the bottom line is, when we're going into translate, one of the things I realized very early was you have to shut up and you can't speak English. So what I have in my book, and you guys have read it, is we use howling and growling and like up howling. Oh, you know, we're offering. When we're bringing it down, we're like, oh, you know, and growling. We banish. We don't use pentagrams, and we don't talk. How we banish our circle is we get into a bear stance like this, and we go, Rah! And we do it 9 different directions, all of us, and that scares the crap out of anything else that's around energetically. We don't have to like say, oh, be gone, oh, blah, blah, blah. No, we just go, Rah! And it's gone. You know, that's how we banish. So everything we do is primal, and everything we do is primordial language. We get into that state, then we can interconnect with the ecosystem. And then we can do things like make the winds, like without thinking. Like we're not up here anymore. We're like trying to light it, and we'll just be like, you know, and it'll stop, and we'll do it. Or we'll light a candle and it started to go out, and we all stand around and we're like, it stops. And we're not thinking about this, and we're not talking about it. We're just like existing, you know. And it's really potent. The best part is, I'll tell you 2 things that are kind of interesting. One is that the next day we're in this trance state for maybe 4 hours, and then we finally come out of it, and we're always sad to come out of it, and then we come out of it, and we're good, and then everybody goes home. And then the next day we check in. Well, no matter how horrible your week has been, and I've had a torn cartilage, and I have kidney stones, and I'm dealing with this stuff and that. I've got so much stuff going on but once I go into that werewolf magic stuff, I'm no longer thinking about anything. All that stress is gone. It's gone. I dump it. The next day, I feel 100% better. And all of us do. We check in. We're like, hey, how you feeling? We're like, I feel great. I feel totally great. Because 90% of my problems are here. Mm-hmm. And they're not real. I have to pay a bill. Oh, I might get upset about this. Might be a problem. Oh, I have to do this for work and I forgot. Think about it. 90% of the stuff you worry about, you stress about, is not real. It hasn't happened yet, right? It hasn't happened. So it's just stuff that's clogging your head. Animals don't worry. My dog's laying on his back with his feet up in the air right now, hoping I feed him, and that's about as far as he's going to go, right? Mm-hmm. And we get into that state. We get in a state of like lazing around, or like, oh, we just like hang out. And then we come out of it, and then we're like, oh, we have to be human again. That's terrible.
Yeah, adulting sucks.
Yeah, yes, it does. And we need that. But you know, you talk to people from other cultures, and like they go into that, they walk into the woods, and they immediately go into that state of like, no, these animals are all part of my life. They're my friends. They're people I know. I have stories about all of them. I have myths about all of them in my culture. So there was something else I was going to talk about. No, I don't remember. I'm on a roll. I haven't had a drop of anything, just some coffee.
That's enough, though. I've had a huge big cup of coffee. But there were 2 things I did want to ask you about, because we talked about some movie stuff, and I'll get to that in a minute. Early in the show, you mentioned Western cultures and the similarities between werewolf stories from, I'm just guessing, Central and Eastern Europe. But you also said you like India. So on the Eastern side, their werewolf is called the Rakshasa.
No.
How different or how similar is that to
Okay.
the European?
No. So I'm actually a student of Tantra and Indian culture. Rakshasa is a demon, is a demonic form. It's not. I've heard people connect werewolf in that, but it's not. That's not real. And in fact, they don't really have a werewolf trope in Indian mythology. But I've seen in books where they refer to, the Rakshasa as a werewolf, but it's not.
I've seen it as a tiger before.
It's a tiger usually, yeah.
It's a demon. It's a demon.
Yeah.
It's an asura that is a particularly vicious kind of demon. Yeah, a tiger is more likely.
In D&D.
Yeah. In D&D? Oh, wow, you're bringing me back now, man.
Don't get Jay started on that, buddy.
Oh, no, I like it.
I like it too. I know. I used to DM in high school, but I miss it. The only way to get it now is games, like video games. But there is online stuff I wouldn't mind looking into.
What about White Wolf? Any of you do any?
I like it.
Werewolf the Apocalypse.
I've never played it, but I know the game. Like I have that PC game, Bloodlines. That's really good. Vampire
that's all right. Werewolf the Apocalypse is the best. My friends would come and we would do Werewolf the Apocalypse, and we'd sit around and we'd be like, "Roar!" and have so much fun.
Yeah,
it was really
fun.
great.
I like White Wolf.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I like that stuff a lot. It's really fun. So let's see, what else can we talk about? Because I can talk about India. There's a Hindu god that is connected with werewolves. So Rudra is the howler. He's called. He's a form of Shiva, and he's red, and he's a hunter, and he's very much like a berserker kind of god. But he's because I went looking there as well. It's kind of interesting stuff. I found all kinds of fun. I got millions of stories, mythology stories about werewolves and stuff. But the bottom line is like a lot in ancient history, in the Celts, in the Vikings, in the Roman legion, for example, always went into war with a wolf standard, and that was kept in the temple of Mars and Ares. And so the wolf has been connected with war and with defense a lot. And no matter all these different cultures, they saw the wolf as the protector. And the warriors, like Celtic warriors, were often called wolves. They used the term ku, C-U, like Culhulain, who's a
Culhulain, yeah.
Culhulain.
Heard of that, yeah.
Ku means wolf and dog. Like a lot of people translate that as dog, but it's also used for wolf. And I found out in a bunch of Celtic stuff, and a lot of the Celtic tribes, they would honor a warrior by putting the ku in front of it as a werewolf, and they were translated as werewolves. A lot of druids took the name werewolf, especially when they were fighting the Christian invasion. They took on the term werewolf as to show they were pagan, that they were still honoring the old spirits and the old ways and the old gods. I mean, everywhere I turned, it was so weird. I mean, it's so weird because when I started looking at the history, everywhere I turned, I found werewolves. Now, if you look for something, you find it, right? But still,
the old story, the old wife story is if a man seeks blood, he will find it.
Right. And if I seek werewolves, I find it. But what was shocking to me was it wasn't hard to find. And that it's everywhere and it's in all the myths, but people just don't talk about it much. And it became a Hollywood trope in the 40s, and everybody likes that stuff. But there's, like in a lot of stuff, like Bigfoot, like a lot of stuff, I truly think there's a lot of truth behind it. And in the werewolf stuff, it comes from shamanism and animism, and it's been there forever. And it's just percolated in the folk magic, not in the high magic or the church or these. But it was a part of the grassroots religious stuff and magic that people did, and people used it to heal. A lot of times, shamans use it to heal.
Well, I mean, if you remember back forgive me, Jeff, if you go back to the D&D, just the game, any creature that changes form, whether it's a magician who polymorphs into a dragon and then back to himself, the guy who gets the party member who gets bitten by a werewolf and turns into a wolf at night and comes back, when you change back, you heal yourself. When you go back and forth between forms, you get healing. You get to roll dice how many hit points you get back. So kind of a weird power, but we were talking about movies as well, and I don't know if you know much about the Lost Boys, the first Lost Boys movie.
Oh, of course I do. Are you kidding?
Originally, the second movie, they were going to do a second movie with that same cast. It never came to fruition, but the second movie was going to be them fighting werewolves.
Oh, really?
Which,
oh,
yes, I would
so
like. Why
cool.
didn't you do that? That would have been so
I
awesome.
know. That was a
But-
great movie.
Allegedly, there's a new remake of the Lost Boys coming out sometime next year, so we'll see if they do any good. But going into the movies, they have put into the werewolf all kinds of weird powers and weird, like kryptonite type things, weaknesses. So, in your research, what's real about the werewolf? I mean,
Okay.
we always see in the werewolf movies that you can kill one with silver or a silver bullet, and I think that's kind of a Hollywood thing. Like the original with the vampire, you know, they didn't turn into they could turn into mist, they could control bats and wolves and other creatures of the night. But as it goes on, they can't see themselves in mirrors, they can't cross running water, they have to bring their own dirt with them to sleep on. So a lot of this stuff is just Hollywood crap,
right,
allowed into the myth. So what is the powers and the weaknesses of a real werewolf?
Well, okay, so I dug deep, and then I went through a lot of the mythos stuff and a lot of the stories and legends that, like you said, like silver. I don't think silver's. I don't believe in that stuff. But the reality is that it came from shamanism. It came from shape-shifting. And then you have to go back to like, why were people shape-shifting? What were they doing? I found there were three basic ways of shape-shifting. One was you would do what my group and I do, which was you go into a deep trance state, you sink it down, you let your full animal self come up. And when you have that full animal self, you have a lot of things you didn't have before. You've all heard of people who, like, their kid gets stuck under a car and they run out, they lift the car up, or in battle, like soldiers who have two broken legs will grab two people who are wounded and run off the field. Things they're not supposed to be able to do, right? We hear about this every day. And I've seen stuff like this. I've seen it where people do things that they shouldn't be able to physically do, but they do it, and then afterwards they're like, I don't remember, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, that's the basis of the Incredible Hulk TV show, where Dr. Banner is studying that exact phenomenon, how this 80-pound woman is able to lift a 2,000-pound car off of her child and save his life.
That's right. And it's real. So our automatic nervous system, our body memory, our animal self is what I call it, can do amazing things, but our brain says, no, you can't. And if you believe in your head you can't do something, you can't do it. And we're brainwashed by a certain set of things, by think about how you were raised and what you were taught and the churches you went to and all the things they said, no, you can't do that. No, that's wrong. So once you shut that down, you can do things like I'm not great at it, but when I go into a werewolf state, I can see in the dark 100% better than I could before. Mm-hmm. And when I tell people that, they're like, oh, no, that's not possible. And I said, well, yes, if you think something's not possible, then it's not. And I'm just telling you what I've experienced. And the same thing is when people move into the shapeshift, you're using your etheric body, you're using your what this great historian named Luc Hantu wrote about. It's called the double. You have an energetic field. It's not superstitious and it's not magic. It's real. You have an aura, and we can take photos of it, right? In shapeshifting, you work with that aura and you create it in the form of a werewolf. That's what we do. You can probably do anything, and you work on it psychologically and mentally, and then you work with your fire center in your gut. It's called the Dantian, or the chakra here. And build and use that energy, use the energy, and you create this kind of form. What the Vikings called wearing the skin, right? And then you go into that, and then you shut your brain down, and then you can do lots of amazing things. So, I don't think it's particularly like witchcraft or anything. I think it's just it's psychological and physical, and like you being able to stop the wind. It's just using the energy that you have and the energy of the earth in a way that's positive and useful. But if you believe those things aren't real, then there's nothing anyone can do. Right?
Yeah, I don't think it's just that they don't think it's real. So I talk about this all the time on the show. Well, not all the time, but frequently when it comes up to scientific methodology. Years and years and years ago, 1957, a lot of things happened in 57. 57, Area 51 was started, and the whole UFO thing. But also, a lot of oceanographers and ocean biologists got together and built the Trieste, a diving bell to go to the bottom of the ocean. Then they took them a year to get down there, and they had two camps. They had one side of the scientists said, we're not going to find anything down there because their minds were locked. We're not going to find anything. The pressure's too great. There's too cold. By the time you get down there, the water's no longer water. It's ammonia. Yada yada. All these different reasons why they'll find nothing. Then you had the other camp who's more optimistic. They were like, oh, we're going to find something. We're going to find either bacteria or virology or some kind of simple one-cell life forms way down at the bottom of the ocean. What did they find?
A million things.
Well, since today, but they actually found something that amazed both camps when they got to the bottom. They scared a flat fish like a sole or a flounder that when they got to the bottom, this large fish kicked up to so much silt they could no longer see. So in order to save themselves from like banging into the side of the cavern that they were in, they went back up. And since then, we found this enormous ecosystem that has jellyfish, cartilaginous fish, bony fish, crabfish, crustaceans, octopus. Every type of animal creature that's up near us is 8 miles down.
Right.
So it's when scientists say no on this side and yes on this side, guess what the truth is? Somewhere in the middle.
Well, or it's mostly yes, actually.
It's mostly yes, but there's always an extreme. Like I said, there's the guy that said nothing, and the guy that said we'll find one thing or something, and we come in the middle, and it's a lot of things.
It's a lot of things.
And the reason why I think we're inhibited with the type of stuff you're talking about, the shamanism, getting our minds, in tune with nature. I don't know if you're familiar with the Anunnaki story, but the Anunnaki were allegedly the alien space creatures that came to Earth and created the human race. When they first got here, they had a group that's their own creation called the Ijiji, which was their worker class.
No, I know Ijiji. My master's degree is ancient history.
Okay, well,
my master's was about this actually.
So, good. So then you know what I'm going. So the Ijiji, they were supposed to do all the heavy work, and they rebelled. They said the work is too much, and the reason I think is because they're from another planet. They just the ecosystem was too great for them to actually do the work. So they said, look, why don't we make a worker race? So they made a worker race, which was they were humans, but not us. And so what they did was they inhibited the brain of these creatures they made, but also made them so they could not reproduce. But they were stupid. They had enough brain to understand, commands, dig that hole, go get that, do this, do the other thing. But they were stupid enough to where they were dying too quickly before the Anunnaki could make more. So what they did was they rethought the experiment and created the Adamu, us. Adamu is the first ones who could recreate or reproduce. But they gave us a little bit more brain power, but not our full brain power. And I think that's where we're having trouble. Is you have to get past those blockages that the Anunnaki put into our genetics, put into our brains, that we can't access this whole. The brain is the largest organ in the body. But we don't use all of it. Do you use all of your heart? And I don't mean in the emotional side. You use your entire heart. If half your heart doesn't work, you don't live very long. You use both your kidneys. If you lose one, you don't clean your blood as efficiently as you should. You use your whole spleen, your whole kidney, your whole stomach, your whole intestines, every other organ in the body you use to its full capacity except this. And that's where I think the block is.
Well, it could be. Yeah, I don't know about. But I did a very sort of structured master's degree. I did a comparative study of the sun gods of Mesopotamia and Egypt. And Igigi or Ijiji means gods, just means the gods. Mm-hmm. So I don't know about a lot of the stuff you said, but I do believe that the brain is capable of way more and functions way differently than people think they do. And I did actually a bunch of neurological stuff, and I've got it in Werewolf Magic about like how does this work? Like how do we, what's going on in the upper cortex and what's going on in the lower cortex and what's going on in other sections? Like you said, there's many sections we don't use. We know. I mean, I've been watching and reading studies about people using psilocybe now for treatment. And what they're finding is that it actually repairs dendrites.
Yeah.
It repairs the interconnections in your brain and opens up parts of the brain that people don't have.
Have never used, yeah.
They don't know how. And so I know that when my group and I go into shapeshifting, we suddenly start using parts of our brain that we don't use. Because all of a sudden we can see it at night. All of a sudden we can hear things we're not supposed to hear. But we're not thinking about it. We're not thinking, oh, I can't hear this, or oh, I can't see in the dark. We're just existing, and we feel things. I'll tell you a really interesting one. You might find interesting. When we shapeshift, one of the things that we're working on, you get to work with your energetic field, and this is what berserkers did too, is they would intensely visualize the form of a bear or a wolf, and they would literally put it on, and then they would enter it, and then they would let their animal self up, and they would become possessed by the bear, right? Or possessed by the wolf. So we do that as well. And I tell people when I coach them through it, and it's in my book, visualize what your werewolf would look like. Visualize, like, what color is your fur? What do you look like? The more intensely you visualize it, you're imprinting the energetic body around you. You're imprinting your brain. And then when we shapeshift, we're in that mode. Now, here's what's interesting. I told my group, I said, don't tell me what you look like. Just do your thing.
Just visualize
we'll
it.
hang out all night. And then when we come back, let's talk about it. So we did this. And at the end, we're all sitting around smoking, passing it around, and afterwards, and like let's talk about what happened tonight, you know? And I said, tell me what you think I look like as a werewolf. And every single one of them said at the same time, you have black fur with gray. And I said, exactly.
And bald on top.
And then we went around. And because there's a woman in our group, and everybody pointed to her and they said, she's a white Arctic wolf. And all of us said, you're a white Arctic wolf. And she said, holy moly, yeah, that's exactly how we went around. We nailed every single person exactly what they looked like as a werewolf. Now, okay, we can have several conversations about that, but what that says to me is that when we're in that state, we are perceiving things that are different from what we normally perceive. And I did this. I've done this with other groups too. I'm like, all right, you tell me what does he look like when he's shapeshifting? And people nail it every time. And then
that's scientific methodology. You do it once, good guess. Do it twice, okay. 3-4 times, then you've got a pattern. But
I believe
you also mentioned the Carillion. Well, you said aura photography. It's called Carillion photography.
No, I didn't say aura. Well, we have an energy field.
Right.
People call it aura.
We do. And you can photograph it. I would suggest, if you haven't done this, I don't know if you can. And I think the Carillion photography actually came out of California.
Yeah.
Either Caltech or Berkeley, whatever, one of those science schools in California. This might be an ideal experiment, is get a group together, however big or small you normally get, and get a Carillion photographer and get everyone's photography before.
That'd be cool.
And then have him photograph you during, and then have him photograph you after the ritual.
I love that, Jay. That's
what
brilliant.
your auras do during, before, and after, and I'll bet you your auras will change.
Also, especially, I want to see what the aura looks like. Like if it has claws and and fangs, that would be
awesome. It won't be that detailed. Yep. The Carillion photography. I've got a degree in video with minors in art history and still photography, and the Carillion photography that I've seen and studied is really, really cool, but everyone has a different color. Like all the Jedi have a different color lightsaber.
Right.
One is purple, blue, green, red, whatever. Everyone's aura is slightly different, and it looks very much like the northern or southern lights, like the aurora borealis.
Right.
It's a wavy pattern, and it's either like a pink or a purple or blue, depending on the person's, I guess, whatever their brain is emitting, because we do emit electromagnetic transmissions. So it depends on the person's wavelengths, what they're thinking, how their brain works, is what the Carillion photography picks up.
But if you've seen Carillion photography of plants,
yes,
they'll take a leaf and they'll cut it.
Yeah,
and
yes,
it's absolutely accurate, because With us, we're just all fuzzy. But if you look at somebody's hand, or like I've seen one where it's a hand where the guy is missing a finger, and the finger is there as a ghost, absolutely clear. So this is interesting stuff. And
it really is. The stuff with the plants is really weird because they take a picture of a leaf, a freshly picked leaf. They take the picture of the whole leaf, then they cut it somewhere, and then they take another picture, and what's been cut away is still there.
Right, which makes sense. It's just like the guy who's missing a finger, but the energy pattern is still there. Yeah. So I mean, at some point, I'd love to do that with a group doing werewolf magic, because I suspect you're going to have some really big auras that are very strange looking.
It would be an interesting experiment. Like I said, I would love to see that.
I love the idea. I love it. No, I'm all about that stuff because, I mean, I have a lot of friends who are involved in occult stuff and witchcraft and everything in paganism, and I worship the earth and I worship nature, but I also I'm a big fan of science. And when I did this stuff with looking at the history of werewolfism and the history of shamans and animism and how these werewolf cults existed and were so popular, and I mean, I was asking myself questions like, how can an entire tribe shapeshift for a week? And why do I see that story over and over and over and over again in like 10 different places? And it's because they're all going into this state of consciousness where they shut down their upper cortex and they just basically act like animals for a week and let loose all those inhibitions, all that stuff. You know Lupercalia? Do you guys know the festival Lupercalia?
I saw briefly about it, yeah, but I don't know much about it. No,
it was the biggest party in the ancient world. It was the biggest festival in Rome. It was 5 days. The entire Rome, all of it. You're talking hundreds of thousands of people. Had this huge party with massive amounts of like nudity and sex and all and drinking and all this. And it was dedicated to the wolf goddess, right? Lupa, who founded Rome. Mm-hmm. But the god was called Faunus. And Faunus was the Roman Pan, who also was the god of wolves. So I started researching this because it was the priests of this festival were called Luperci, which means werewolf. And so the priests were werewolves. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Then I found the ritual work. They had this ritual under the cave before the beginning of the festival, where 2 people were blessed and charged as being the werewolves, being the priests. And this whole ritual was done where originally a wolf was sacrificed, and then later it was a dog. It's the only Roman festival where that happens. And a goat. And they do this whole ritual thing of having these 2 people, the spirit of the god, the spirit of the wolf goes into them. They go into the shape-shifting thing and are probably taking some other things, I don't know what, and they're blessed. And then the goat is killed, and then they wear the goat skin, and they have strips of the goat, and they go into a trance state. Then they burst forth, run amok, and they go around whipping, usually women, I would assume, but probably men and women, with these thongs, these goat thongs, for fertility, and they would get women who wanted to get pregnant would run up and be either naked or semi-naked and get blessed. And everybody, and this it turned into a complete wild frenzy debauch for 5 days.
And people wonder why Rome fell.
Well, then what happened? Then when Christianity took over, the Pope tried to put an end to it. He said, "All right, no more of this heathenism," and they wouldn't stop. They wouldn't stop. So he said, "All right, we're changing the festival to the festival of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary." That didn't help.
No.
So they moved the saint of a very obscure, the festival of a very obscure saint called Saint Valentine to that festival. And that's why we have Valentine's Day on the same day as Lupercalia.
So St. Valentine's Day, we should all be running around naked, slapping girls with goat thongs and hoping they sleep with us.
Something along those lines. I don't know. You can slap whoever you want. Boys
I'm in.
And girls.
Get it organized. I'll join in.
If girls want to slap me, that's fine. I'm whatever. I mean,
hey, it works both ways, I mean,
everything is. But I just thought it was hilarious reading this, like. So, and then I started reading about the different cultures, different like Celtic tribes and Germanic tribes that would have, people would go, or Russian tribes like Herodotus So the Nurai every year for a week would all turn into werewolves. I'm like, what does that look like? And then I found the Lupercalia. I'm like, oh, that's what it looks like. It's like Oktoberfest on steroids with werewolves, you know.
Nice. Is that like Saturnalia or whatever? Saturnalia
or Bacchanalia?
Yeah. Oh, I have a bunch of stuff in here about Saturnalia and about that too. The Midwinter Festival was very sacred to werewolves because that was the time when wolves bred, and there was this great festival they had where the werewolf. Anyway, I've got it in my book, but the werewolf. This werewolf. It was the story of this, like, they call it the devil, but it wasn't really the devil. He had one cloven foot and one regular foot, and he would go around knocking on doors and making all the werewolves come out, and they had a big party and a big parade, and it was the stuff was written by a bishop who was furious that this area of Lithuania had this festival where all the werewolves would come out and all the Christians would hide and lock the door, and the werewolves would come out and run amok, and they would break into the taverns and drink all the beer, and they would steal all the food, and then when the Christmas morning bells would ring at dawn, they would all go back to their farms. And I'm like, oh my God, that just sounds like the best party ever. I mean,
Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, midwinter was the time when the werewolf cults were really big. You know, Krampus? You know about Krampus?
Yeah, love that. Yeah.
Where the werewolf cults used to do that. They used to do Krampus stuff. You know, big festivals and dress and stuff, and go out and, you know, get wild.
We got to revive that, definitely.
Hey, I wanted to say something. I've been watching Cabinet of Curiosities on Netflix by Guillermo del Toro.
Yes,
it's really good. That's one to watch for Halloween. No matter what you do, watch it as Halloween comes in. They've been releasing 2 episodes a night.
Yep.
There's 2 more tonight that I'm caught up, except for the 2 tonight. But the first episode was about a storage lot that the dude from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Now I'm forgetting his name. He's a great actor. No, the other one. God, I just was saying his name over and over. He was in a Billy the Kid movie recently. I saw.
It's got a great demon, that one.
And let me get his name.
It's a great show.
John Turturro.
Yeah.
No, not him. It's the other guy.
It's not him. Yeah, I don't remember his name either. But Piggy's model last night was
Tim Blake Nelson.
Oh yeah, he's going to be in the new Marvel universe as the guy with the big green head.
Oh,
I don't remember which one that is, but
he's one of Hulk's mortal enemies.
Okay,
the Enigma or something like that. I can't remember his name.
He's a good actor. He's in this Billy the Kid Western too, where it turns out, I won't give it away, but it's really good. But anywho, Henry or something's the Western. But anyway, and also that first episode was like Nazi artifacts and demon summoning.
Right.
One episode about a crazy lotion situation with this lady.
I didn't like that one.
Yeah, that lady's goofy. She reminded me of Mr. Bean, but she cutened up with the lotion. But
last night, Pigman's model was really good.
The Lovecraft Night. Last night was H.P. Lovecraft Night.
The Witch House was pretty good too.
They were.
No, I love Del Toro. Del Toro.
Me too. The Shape of Water.
Pan's Labyrinth.
Yes, Pan's Labyrinth. Devil's Backbone. That was one of
Devil's Backbone. A very underrated movie that is one of the best movies ever.
This show's the way to go if you're looking for something for Halloween.
Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt.
And if you're looking for something to read on Halloween, I've got 2 books for you.
Yes, Werewolf Magick and Werewolf Pack Magic.
Yeah, that's right.
And definitely
Howl.
And the other thing I've been reading is Ray Bradbury's The Halloween Tree, and there's also a cartoon movie that you can get that's on DVD.
I know both of those. Yes.
Those are really good. Yeah, clavicle.
What can I say? I love all that stuff.
It's great.
I think it's really fun. Really fun stuff.
You ever heard of Al Going Back? OWL Going Back? He writes native horror books.
No.
I'll have to send you the show, but he's been around for a while, but we had him on not too long ago. He just did a Werewolf by Night comic for Marvel.
Did you watch Werewolf by Night?
Yes, that was great.
It was hilarious.
Yes.
Very good. Way better than I expected it to be.
We need more Man Thing. We need more Werewolf by Night. I liked it. I'm hoping they do some more with that.
I'm sorry it was only an hour long. It really ticked me off because it was so fun. And they got a great guy to play the werewolf, and it was great. It was really cool. And yeah, I've watched it 4 times.
Yeah, you love that.
And what can I say?
It's good.
For my birthday, I had a party, and the people who were left over at the end had to watch Werewolf. Had to watch Werewolf and the Werewolf movie again. So
yeah, it's definitely good. It's worth
you come
watching.
to my house for watching that movie. That's the way it is.
Any other? What's some werewolf movies that you love? What about American Werewolf in London?
Yeah, great movie. Have you
That's
seen
a good movie. Special effects are good.
Very good.
Which one?
Where? WER.
I don't know. Let me look it up.
It's a French movie, and it's really badass. It's really good.
I think I have seen it. Yeah.
It's very serious and very clever and very well done, and it brings you into a very authentic headspace about it. It's hard to find, but if you find it, I really like that one.
Have you guys seen the Dog Soldiers?
Oh God, yes, that's my favorite.
It's a good one.
Action, in terms of like action, that one and the one that's on the train, and I'm trying to remember what it's called.
And Howl.
The Howl is good.
That's the train one, I think.
Oh, is it the Howl? Okay,
I believe it's Howl. Just Howl.
The British one with the train, where yeah, that's really fun. Yeah, I like that. But where was the most?
Neil Marshall has a new movie.
Yeah, no, I've seen them all. If it's a werewolf,
Neil Marshall has a new horror movie coming out today, The Lair, and it's about this soldier lady that somehow gets in this bunker in Afghanistan. And there's like a hybrid alien in it. It's called The Lair.
Wow,
it just came out today. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm looking for it for sure.
Yeah, there's not enough good werewolf movies, I've got to say.
There was Wolves with Jason Momoa. Actually, wasn't that bad.
I like that one. I like it. Jason Momoa makes a very good, badass werewolf.
He's a good actor. I mean, I've watched his career since he started in Stargate.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I saw his werewolf movie later, and I was like, oh, he's a good werewolf. He's great. I really like that a lot. It was interesting.
He's got a feral quality to his face anyway. When he's got his beard, he looks kind of werewolfy.
He definitely, totally does. He's got that look. Yeah, that's right.
So, Denny, have you had any paranormal or UFO type experiences or anything paranormal?
I have had a several, and so all right, I'll tell you my UFO one if you want. And I don't. We
got about 12 minutes, so
all right, I'll make it very fast. Very fast. I was working at a live-in youth home for at-risk youth who were on their. Most of these people were on their way to juvie prison. Because they had, they were stealing cars and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we had a sort of, it wasn't fully locked down, but we had a unit in the woods. There were several of them, and we were trying to get them steered towards something better, right? So I lived there 7 days on, 3 days off. It was in the middle of the woods in Silverdale, which is in the middle of nowhere on an island in the south. And a friend of mine came to visit, and she and I were jogging. And the only escape I had from these kids constantly around me was to go jogging in the woods. And there was a big old cemetery behind it, an abandoned cemetery. So we went jogging so we could get a break from all the kids. And we're up in the cemetery and we're jogging around, and it's pitch black. There's no lights anywhere, right? We're in the woods and there's like literally no lights. And we sort of stop and we're sitting and we're talking. We're leaning against a headstone. All of a sudden, like that, this light comes down from above us. No sound, no rotor, no helicopter, nothing. Just silence, and then all of a sudden, this light comes down. Lit up so bright you couldn't look up. Lit up the cemetery so brightly that you could read the headstones. I've never seen anything like this before. And we couldn't look up, and we're looking at each other like, what the fuck is this? Excuse me. What the heck is this?
Okay, it catched it.
Okay. I'm like, what is this? And we're both paralyzed, like, whoa. So then we look and we sort of try to look at it, and all of a sudden it goes whoop, and the light's gone, and we look straight up and we see a bright light up in the sky, and all of a sudden it moves, and whoosh, gone. Okay. So we both look at each other. We had like a flashlight. We opened up the flash, we turned on the flashlight, and I said, before we say anything, let's just check our what like science, right? I will tell you what I saw. You tell me what you saw. Let's see if we saw the same thing. And we went through it, and we were like, check, 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 check. All right, so we all saw the same thing. The next day, we both had sunburns.
Wow.
Okay, and so the question is, because I do like to try to be scientific, the question is, was it an alien? Was it an alien vessel, or was it a U.S. Air Force secret ops something?
Yeah.
And I don't know, but that's my UFO story. And I'm sticking.
Nice. Well, thanks for sharing it. One thing that I love is UFO Sasquatch encounters, and there's Stan Gordon in Pennsylvania that's like this dead serious dude that shares all these crazy stories about it. There's some big story, but some town that had a weird one with Sasquatch and UFOs, and the military came out and all this, and the town's like known for it. If you check out those Small Town Monsters documentaries, they've been doing some good Bigfoots. I've had him on, and I have another guy that wrote a book, Bruce Hollenbach, coming on about a place up in Hudson Valley, Sleepy Hollow, paranormal and Bigfoot stuff in January. Looking forward to that. But anyway, if you look at, I've had Kawani Leporitis on, and he tells stories of Bigfoot and portals and Dogman and Bigfoot like fights, like they have kind of like a quarrel. I don't know if they all do, but he's dead serious about this stuff. But
I'm just hate to see that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna I'm betting on the Sasquatches. I'm a huge Sasquatch fan, and I'm gonna say, look, if it's gonna be an all-out like fight, I'm gonna lay money on the Sasquatches. They are badass
for sure. So, but it definitely gets weird, so many different levels with this Dogman and Bigfoot stuff. I love it. Then throw in some UFOs.
I honestly think, I don't know about the Dogman or the werewolf stuff, but I do think that there are people who can shapeshift, and I do think there are people who, and the question that kept coming up for me over and over again, and I'll kind of end with this, is like, how come for thousands of years, several hundred, at least through Western culture, people have seen werewolves? Like, how do they see them? And I think I figured it out. And at the end of this, if you get to the end of this, the last thing in the last part of the book is, what does it look like when somebody takes their energy field, goes into a coma, projects their consciousness into this werewolf energy, and walks as a werewolf? Because in every culture, certain things have been said, and you can correlate them. One, when a person shifts into a werewolf form, their eyes stay human. Like every single culture says the same thing. You can look at the eyes and say, oh, those aren't wolf eyes, that's a human eye. The second thing is that when someone, and there's lots of stories, and I have them in here, historically cited stories, of people who stab a werewolf or shoot a werewolf, they track down the person and they find them in bed with the exact same wound. Like there's just like over and over again, you hear the same sorts of things. My general thesis on this is that they go into, and then I found some stuff from Slavic. There's a lot of Slavic stuff about werewolves that I didn't know, and this kind of pieced into it. That people would go, and the part of the shamanic stuff is not just working through it and having the animal self come through you, but also you go into a trance state, like literally a coma, leave and move yourself out of the body, and then can be seen, but can also be injured. So anyway, this is all interesting stuff. I don't know what to say about it. I do say in my book, don't try this at home, kids, because I'm not going to go into a trance. Like the last part of the book, I say, this is the third level of shapeshifting. I'm not going to do it. You shouldn't do it because it takes shamans. I've talked to shamans. It takes them decades to do this kind of stuff, to go into the underworld, to leave their body and look for caribou, right? And I've talked to these people. Says, to confirm.
One of the points you made, which I found interesting, is in going back to we mentioned briefly the Incredible Hulk TV series. When he first changes into the Hulk, he scares a hunter and his son, and the hunter shoots him in the arm. And then when he goes back to his lab and regresses back to human form, he's got the same wound. It's healed partially, but it's in the same place.
Right.
The hunter doesn't track him back and see that wound and realize, oh, this big green monster is this little tiny scientist dude. but you as the viewer go, yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
It's logical. It's logical. And
Mhm.
and I found this in Roman stuff, Greek stuff, Norse stuff, Celtic stuff, the exact same stories of, they cut the paw off the wolf and then the guy goes back and his
He's
wife's
missing that same hand or that same
What
side
did you
hand.
did you ever get? We don't have much longer, but Skinwalkers is pretty interesting. If you look at Skinwalker Ranch and where they had the wolf sighting and shot at it and all that stuff, but that's they just did a sequel to that book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, where the military went out to that
Really?
place with Bigelow. Yeah, there's a sequel to the book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. Hunt for the Skinwalker, the first book.
Yeah.
There's a sequel. And
Wow.
supposedly military, it's George Knapp and Kelliger, whatever his name is. But supposedly the military went out to that ranch with Bigelow and came back to their homes and had phenomenon happen and felt their children were in
They
danger.
brought the phenomenon back with them. Yeah.
And I know the Skinwalkers, some of them have been seen as like weird native kind of creepy ghosts, but there's also some wolf imagery there that's kind of creepy.
Right.
I interviewed a guy, J.C. Johnson, that said you have to kill one of your own members of your family or something. That's what the Navajo thing, and that's how you become one to do some act of evil. But that's stuff that gets scary.
I left out Skinwalkers because I respect Native Americans. I respect what they say. A lot of the information I got about shapeshifting was different.
Yeah.
But if you go into the Western tribes, shapeshifters are considered evil, and so I don't.
Yeah.
Same in voodoo, because I have friends who are deeply into voodoo, and the loup garou in voodoo is considered like an evil spirit. So
Yeah.
I stay away from. I stick with.
That's
the Western.
probably best in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I say S-Walker most of the time because I just don't even want to say the word. S-Walker.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's probably wise.
But Denny, it's been amazing. We love you here. Power to the wolf people, power to the earth. What is your website? And you got about 4 minutes. So.
Oh, I don't know what to say, but if people are interested, I mean, I have the 2 books. This one is on its 10th printing, I think, and then this one is coming out now. And this is really for if you want to work with a group. And I actually hadn't planned on that, but I ended up doing it because I found that working with a group is, 1, it's way fun. 2, it's way more powerful, and you get stuff done better and move. I don't know. It's the magic is perfect. Plus, there's a ton of stuff in here. One of the things I've got in here is I have an Oracle deck which I'm now publishing, and it's now for sale. You've got to if you go to my website or you go to my Facebook page, it's Denny Sargent Author. So if people are interested in contacting me, I have all kinds of people contacting me, and I respond to everybody. If somebody writes me and says, "I think I'm a wolf, can you tell me about it?"
What's the Oracle set? Is that something coming out or it's already out?
It's already out, but you have to. It's print on demand. It's called the Werewolf Magic Oracle.
Wow.
And it's a deck. Yeah, I can run and get it, but I think by the time I go,
no, I'm gonna get out when I get paid. I got to pick that up for sure.
Yeah, if you go to my if you go to Denny Sargent Author, that I have my own author page, and I have it right there. How to get it? You just click it, and you buy it. It's like $20 or something, but it actually looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy. And a lot of more things are coming, and I'm busy writing my 3rd book, which is called Feral Magic. I'm going to take everything I learned from Werewolf Magic in terms of how do you do it, strategy, procedure, because I have a lot of people coming to me saying, well, I am connected with the spirit of a tiger. I'm connected with the spirit of an elephant, or how can I do the same sort of things? And I was like, I don't know. Why not? So that's what I'm writing a book on, like people. I'm calling it neo-animism is what I'm calling what I'm doing now.
Awesome.
And opening it up for people who want to work with animal spirits in other ways.
Did you see that new Monsters with the black werewolf guy? It was pretty funny. The Rob Zombie. It's worth the watch, but sometimes it's hard to watch. The Monsters.
I love Rob Zombie.
I do too. It's worth the watch, but some parts I'm like, my God, am I going to make it through this? Like, it's got its ups and downs, but there's a black dude that's a werewolf that I love. They need to give him a show.
Sounds good to me.
It's good. It's worth the watch. It's worth the watch. But yeah,
sounds like fun.
As with anything he does, it causes a stir and divides people. But I love his music. I've liked
all
his movies.
Yes, Mr. Bill.
Well, Denny, it's been great. Will you give us a howl before you leave? We want to hear.
Oh, sure. I mean, I'll give you the full on if you want. So
yeah, please.
Yeah.
Be careful now.
Yeah, don't pop a lung.
Loved it. Thank you. We appreciate it so much. We'll stay in the loop and get you on again. We loved it. You're the Halloween show, baby. You're the man. All right. Have a great one.
Wild. Americans are too bloody. I don't know. Caged. Get out there. Have
You're right.
fun. Get in the woods. Howl. Run amok. Be normal.
We appreciate it. Thanks so much, everybody. You've listened to the Halloween show at the Church of Mabus. You're listening to United Public Radio 107.7 FM New Orleans. Everybody have a happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
3 days away.
Come werewolfmagic.com if you want to get a hold of me. I'm right there.
Stay in touch, man. Good night. Take care, everybody. Take care, brother. All right, brother truckers, have a good one. Happy Halloween. Good night, everybody.
Good night.